Hello my friends, this is Sylvie Curry, Lady of Q, and I'm in my kitchen. It's Christmas Eve and I've been doing a lot of prep of different items I'm going to be showcasing tomorrow during our Christmas dinner. I've gone through a number of items and there'll be a link to all those different items in this video description. The highlight of tomorrow's meal is going to be a prime rib roast. And I got a prime, Costco prime beef rib roast. And prime being the grade of beef, and prime to indicate that it is a prime beef cut. So prime beef, the prime actually means prime cut. The grade is a prime, so I'll just call it a prime. This is a pretty big piece of meat. It's 20 pounds. And I don't know if I showed all of it. 20 pounds. I'm going to be trimming it up and getting it ready to be salted overnight, and I'll cook it tomorrow. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, looks like 7 bones in this prime rib roast. So let's go on to the next steps. This is a gorgeous piece of meat. I have to turn it around so you can see the marbling. Lots of good marbling on this prime rib. It's got a lot of fat on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim down a lot of this fat and get rid of some of the silver skin that's in there also. So let's get to it. I look at the trimming process as being similar to doing a brisket for competition. We'll get a lot of the fat off because we know that even if we season the fat, it doesn't season the meat. And there's usually like big pieces of fat going across. Don't see so much on this side yet, but I can tell that right in here there is quite a bit of fat. I'm going to continue trimming and show you different stages of where I am in the process through the videos. I'm continuing to cut down this prime rib. Let me show you. This is from one of the ends, and I had to cut off, I cut off 3 steaks, primarily because they wouldn't fit in my rib rack or my rib pan. But we can have those later. Those are nice rib eyes. I've got a nice little rib cap that's right there. There's the eye of the rib eye. Nice piece of meat, really nice piece of meat. I hope it cooks up as good as it looks. And continuing to cut this, there's a big section here, real thick fat. I'm going to cut a lot of that out. Continuing to trim this prime rib roast. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim these bones. I'm going to not separate, but just trim down this area so that after it's cooked tomorrow, it will be easier to slice because I can just go in there and separate the bone plate from the actual ribeye. I'm going to cook them together though. I've seen a number of videos where some people separate it, but I'd like to have that bone there as an insulation on the other side. And if you can see that, I still can go down a little bit more. And then tomorrow, after it's cooked, I'll continue to separate the bone plate from the meat so that I can get my slices much easier. I'm also going to cut this section of fat. That's just all fat. That's not very much meat in there at all, if you can see that. I can get a little bit more in here, turn it around. That's all hard fat. Excuse me. It may look to you like I'm cutting good meat out, but it's mainly hard fat. Let's clean this up. And when I come back, I'll show you my next step of how we're going to handle this prime rib. Okay, now that we've got our prime rib all trimmed up, and I'll show you each side. Looking very nice. I trimmed off that big, thick plate of fat, and I trimmed down the bone plate so that when it's complete cooking tomorrow, it'll be easier just to cut that part off and eat. Now what I'm going to do in order to keep prime rib attached to the bone is I'm going to take some twine, butcher's twine. And ordinarily this is done to hold the shape of the meat, and oftentimes they will French these bones so that the twine fits down in there. But I have some meat lovers who will be here tomorrow, and I'm sure that they're going to want to indulge in some of this beef rib here. So I'm going to leave it on. Okay, so I'm going to take my butcher twine, and I'm going to go between each of the bones. I'm going to go between each of the bones and tie it together. And I'll come back and show you what that's going to look like once all of it's complete. Okay, I've got the prime rib bound together with the butcher's twine, and that's going to help tomorrow when I go to cook it, because I'm going to do a reverse sear, and if I had those plates separate, then doing a reverse sear they flap apart and all that, so this keeps them together. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to salt the prime rib. It's sort of like a dry brine overnight, and tomorrow when I get ready to cook it, I'm going to add other seasonings to it, but just for our overnight seasoning, I just got some salt here. And it doesn't matter how much you put on there right now, because this is a big piece of meat and it can handle it. I'm sure it will be no problem. I'll just salt all sides. Go back over to this side. And this is just plain old kosher salt. And I make sure I get all over. And finish here on the top. Pat that in. And in this area, you got to get some of those bones too. Remember I said that's good eats. Gnaw on those bones. My hubby loves that. Okay, then we've got that prime rib, dry brined, and I'm going to sit it, move this over a little bit, and I'll show you the pan that I'm going to put it in. We'll set it right in there for now. Put that in the refrigerator overnight, and in the morning we'll be ready to cook it. And I'll go through that process with you tomorrow morning. I'm getting ready to make the seasoning mixture to go on the prime rib. And what I have is some olive oil where I've put about 5 to 6 cloves of garlic, and I put some pepper in there. There's probably about a teaspoon of ground black pepper. And then I'm going to add, I have some fresh thyme from my garden and also some fresh rosemary from my garden. And I'm going to put that in the mixture. This is then going to be blended, and then I'll rub the prime rib with it. Last night I did salt the prime rib, so that's the reason why there's no salt in this mixture, because there's a lot of salt on the outside of the prime rib already. So I'll put these in here, and we'll be making a little noise with this little blender. Slice up the garlic. That's my blended mixture. I've got my prime rib that was refrigerated last night, uncovered. And this is my seasoning mixture. And I'm going to be rubbing this all over this prime rib. Let's start with the back side. So this is going to have like a lot of garlic, rosemary flavor to it, which I happen to like. And you can put almost any mixture of seasoning that you like. You don't have to be limited to what you saw in a recipe or whatever. You don't like rosemary, don't put it in. Your friends don't like garlic, don't put it in. The other thing about the garlic, just to be aware of, is that garlic may burn, but we're going to cook this very slow, so hopefully the garlic won't burn. It's pretty well ground up in there. And I'm going to be putting this on the top. Remember, how long does it take to cook? It's going to vary. I'm going to put a temperature probe in, and I'm going to cook it to, probably about, I want to take it to about 120. And I say 120 because I'm going to reverse sear it at the end. And that reverse sear is going to get the temperature up to a medium rare of about 135 by the time I finish the process. And we'll do that in a few. I was going to cook this prime rib on my smoker, but it's raining cats and dogs outside, and I just didn't want to be bothered with having to run back and forth outside in the rain, carrying this heavy piece of meat. So I'm just going to actually do it in my convection oven. And I have the convection oven, as I said, set for 250. I think I have it at 250. I did a little change on this. At first I was just going to roast it in the pan, but then I decided there's going to be lots of drippings from this prime rib. So I put in the pan some cut up onions, a couple of carrots, some potatoes, celery, and some of the rosemary twigs. I have my temperature probe set where it goes approximately down midway into the center of the prime rib, and I set it for 118 degrees internal temperature, at which time then I'll pull it and do the reverse sear on it. So we're going to put this baby in the oven, cook it for how many hours it's going to take, and I'm allowing myself at least 4 hours, and we'll see what we get. Prime ribs, cooking there now, temperature 110, so we're not far from when we get ready to sear. Okay, the prime rib is now at 118. I'm going to take it out and bring the oven up to a good broil. pull away on those bones. So I didn't need to French them after all because they look Frenched all by themselves. This is still only at 118 and I need to do my reverse sear. So I've got my oven pumping up to a broil and we'll get that going.
Did you get a lot of rain?
And turn it. Or you can do Y and a T, a W and a T.
You had them in giant pieces. You've never been back from this trip.
Okay, there we have it. Prime rib.
Do that again?
Oh, there we have it. Prime rib.
She was testing
Then we got
for
the
her show in Alabama.
beef ribs.
And we had,
And I'll put those back in the oven so they can cook a little bit more unless those who like the beef ribs want them rare.
different meats. Chicken.
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 I don't think she had chicken.
You can take it off now.